Success and failure are important aspects of our lives as a whole and to our creative journey as well. So, how do we cope with both the success and the failure? And when we fail, how do we work towards using that failure to inspire us to succeed in the future? That's what we're going to be talking about today. And by we, I actually mean me and someone else for a change, not just me talking to you through the camera lens. I'm excited to welcome to our channel my partner in these video shenanigans and one of my very favorite people in the world, my firstborn child, the lovely and talented Jordan West.
Hi.
That's all you got. Hi.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good. Now, let me spend a minute and give you a bit of background on Jordan. She has been fascinated with stories and storytelling for as long as I can remember. She has a bachelor's degree in communication with a focus on creative writing and has her master's in screenwriting as well. About 2 years ago, she was gracious enough to agree to walk with me on this dream I had to encourage the creative nature within all of us through the On Paths Less Taken channel. She serves as our producer, our script editor, and also writes some of the episodes as well. She is a planner and has a great sense of tone and balance in all of the communication, which helps me out a bunch. Now, just like you and me, Jordan has done a bunch of things in her life and has seen both success and failure. And so we thought it would be cool to have a little bit of a dialogue about that. So before we get started, Jordan, is there anything you would like to share with us?
Yeah. I mean, I, like you said, have loved storytelling since I was a little girl. I would write true crime novels about my missing Barbie dolls and my siblings when I were detectives, but I never really thought of that as my like passion until my mom forced me to write poetry when I was 12, and I said no, absolutely not, that's not who I am. And I cried through the whole process and then came out with a poem that I still have to this day about the Mississippi River. Very boring topic, very creative start to my love of writing. I saw that I could create something out of nothing and take the words in my head and form it into something that was pretty and entertaining or whatever the tone is of that thing. And from there, that's when I started to say, oh, I am a writer, and so it started from my hate of wanting to do a writing project to the love of the process. And I can't say that it's been easy doing any of the writing that I've done. I've learned a lot of the how-tos and the how-to-nots. But yeah, it's like anything in life that's worth loving it's also hard work, So yeah, that's like where I've kind of started and then am now in my creative writing journey and relationship with that field of the creative process.
All right, great. So let's discuss success and failure. Now, we just got some questions we're going to go back and forth on, and hopefully that will give us an opportunity to just have some dialogue. Cool?
Cool.
Okay, so it seems like success never really quite hits the same as failure in our lives. Success seems to fade quickly, but failure seems to linger longer than it should. So why do we respond more to failure than success?
For me, just personally, I think that it has a lot to do with what voice is louder inside our heads. The image of the little devil sitting on your shoulder is the angel and the devil, it's the back and forth that we have. And we have that internal dialogue that kind of like happens inside of our own brain of like, when we succeed, we're like, yay. When we fail, we're like, oh no. And that, we as humans are, not perfect, and we tend to fail more than we succeed, or at least we perceive our failures a lot more than we perceive our success. And so for that, that voice of failure tends to be louder than the voice of success, because success is like, yay, check the box, I did it, that's what was supposed to happen. But when failure happens, that's not what we anticipated, that's not what we wanted, it's not the outcome that was desired. And so it sits with us because we think that we messed up. We think that, the world messed up around us, the process messed up. And it's not always, something that we can take with, our ego out of it, and we are able to sit with that and then learn from it, And so for failure, it is louder because it's not what we wanted. And so that spiral can happen a lot of, it wasn't meant to be this way. It wasn't meant to be this way. And those spiraling voices inside of us, that internal dialogue that we have, the little devil on our shoulder that likes to pull out his little megaphone and say, you failed, a lot louder than us listening to the little angel on our other shoulders that says, it's okay, you can keep going, We tend to see the negatives a lot more than we see the positives. And I think that's why failure sits with us so much longer, is because of our human nature and our human response to how we perceive that as like a personal failing, even if it's something that's like external from us. So we still take that as I have failed, I have done wrong, I've messed it all up, and we sit with that rather than allowing ourselves to grow from it.
Yeah, I think the word that you said that kind of stuck with me there was, you said spiral. Like with failure, we spiral, right? Or we have that capacity. We can spiral into a constant just rehash of the failure, but we don't do that with success.
Yeah,
we don't have a spiraling. Let's say we spiral down with failure, like it continues to bog us down, right? We don't have that same concept with success. We don't have this spiraling up necessarily. Now, maybe we do sometimes, but it's not the regular thing like spiraling in failure is.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
And there is also like, we always fear failure. We always fear that spiral, but we don't talk about as much of like, we also have that potential of fearing success too, because there isn't that spiral up, like you're talking about. There isn't that like, the upward motion of it. Like sometimes you can be so afraid of like, what happens when I do succeed? What happens like if I succeed? That then the failure becomes the only option, that kind of in our brains, in that situation of like, well, no, I need to fail because I can't succeed. I don't know what to do with that success. I don't know how to move forward from the thing going right, that I want to go right, but I'm so afraid of it going right that I don't know what's next, or I don't know how to handle what is next, even if I do know what it is, and I think that that's also part of that fear and failure cycle,
Sure.
It's the fear of success, fear and failure, that dichotomy that we have there.
Well, and we're talking about that because you and I have had this conversation before. And my thing, I don't fear failure as much as I do fearing success. And you and I have talked about that. It doesn't make any sense. But it is a thing for me. And so, like, why would we be afraid of succeeding at something? Well, to be honest, I honestly don't know. I think it is, to your point. There is some ease in failure, like almost like there's an expectation for failure in life, and there's less expectation to succeed. So when you do succeed, it seems like everybody kind of your response to it just hits different. Because of, especially if you succeed at a lot of things, like. There is a problem with being overly successful, especially well, at least for me. When I was a kid, I could do nothing wrong. Like I was the smart one of my brothers, Now, they tell you that wasn't the case, but parents and teachers were telling me that, and your uncles, they wouldn't
Never.
they wouldn't let me have
To their
that.
grave.
But the reality is that I was set up for failure because of the expectation for success. And I think that stuck with me to the point where I haven't done some things that people like you and have told me I'd be successful at because I've got that thing in me that says that success is going to be an issue. Like there's going to be expectation that I succeed again. And we see that, right? We see that in with people that are successful. I've talked about this on this channel before. We've discussed it before, you and I. But people that succeed as like talk about one-hit wonders in music or even in film, those filmmakers that make one good movie, or there's this constant fear of that being the only success that they ever have, or the success is tied to that specific thing that they did, so they try to recreate it, and then there's this fear of success but not matching the same success is a failure. And I think from a creative standpoint, having that fear of failure and that fear of success are so kind of bound together and tied together because we see success that doesn't match the success we had before as a failure, where it could just be the success that you need today.
True. Yeah.
Right. But it is a funny thing that you talk about that because it is my thing. Like to fear succeeding at something doesn't make any sense at all. But
No.
All right. I believe that we all want to succeed in the endeavors that we put our minds and even our bodies to in life. But success doesn't always teach us the same way that failure does. How has that played out for you?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest, like, most defining moments for me creatively was when I was doing my master's. I had to write a feature-length script. So it was part of the whole like thesis of the program. And I thought I knew what I wanted to do, and I went in. I was writing a children's fantasy film, and I went in knowing, and the group that I had that we were developing our features together, we would give, notes to each other and all of that. And I found by the end of that term that my story had completely changed from what it originally was, and that I didn't know it anymore. And so the next term we were supposed to come back and just do like a second draft of the same thing that we had finished. And I came back and I told them, I have to redo this completely. This is my story. And so for me, I came back, tail between my legs because I thought I failed. I didn't do the thing that I was supposed to do the last term, and now I have to do it all over again. And I'm not doing the process correctly, and I'm going to, fail my master's degree because I had to start over. But in that whole process, spoiler alert, I finished my master's. I didn't fail because I went back and I, put my head down and I did the work, and they saw that exemplified in my final product, and they knew it wasn't polished the way it should have been because I didn't take the time to just rework what I already had. I had to redo what I did. And so it was a first draft rather than a second draft of the first thing, But what I learned from that whole process of what I perceived as a failure compared to everybody else that was just working on their second drafts was how to hear my own creative voice and not, and how to filter out all of the other good. Like a lot of them, like the feedback that I got was really good and constructive and good for processing through the whys and the hows and the whos and all of the questions of what was making my story. But I took all of that at the beginning, the first term, I took it and I said, oh, they must know more than me, or, maybe they see something that I don't, so I have to take everything that I'm
Mhm.
told externally and apply it. And that's just not the case. Like, there was some things that I kept in my second run of my story, and there was some things that I just completely pushed away because I was like, that's not the story I'm trying to tell. And I was the only one
Yeah.
doing a creative fantasy children's film. Everybody else was doing, things more aimed at adult audiences, and they were family
Mm.
dramas and historical dramas and things like that. There was a heist film. So like nobody was
Mm.
doing what I was doing, and therefore I was the expert. Even though I wasn't an expert, I was the expert in that sense of I was the only one doing that. Therefore, I was the only one that truly understood that what story needed to be told. And that's that moment of my script, and
Mhm.
learning how to process through all of those voices being thrown at me, but learning how to
Mhm.
hear my voice was the real success that came from that perceived external
Sure.
failure. And so now it's made my writing that I do now even more strong because I can be like, hey, give me your feedback on this. And people will give me feedback. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'll take that note, but I'm not going to take that note. You might think that you
Yeah.
need to take everything. Like, if you gave me feedback on something, you might giving
Mm.
me the feedback be like, oh, she's going to take all of this to heart, she's going to like use all my notes because she like asked me for the advice, and she's obviously going to take
Mhm.
it. No, I might take one or two things out of the list of 10 that you like give me, but that doesn't mean that
Mhm.
all 10 of those things weren't valuable in my processing for myself of
Sure.
asking myself the questions about what I'm doing with my creative work.
Mhm.
So I think that that for me is one of um the ways that failure has taught me not only like how to succeed, but how to continue to fail well. And we don't think about
Okay.
that side of
Yeah.
things of like, because
Sure.
like we're always going to keep failing at things. Like that's just
Yeah.
the inevitable truth of what it is to be a human on earth. We're going to keep
Yeah.
failing, but like, how do you fail well? How do you take that failure and let
Sure.
it mold you into your next success?
Yeah.
And so I think it's easy to kind of put those parameters when we're in like the academic world because there's a
Mhm.
certain structure within that. But I think
Mm.
it gets a little more ambiguous when we move into, um, the creative works outside of academia or,
Sure.
when it comes to career and things like that. And
Mhm.
so like I know that you did your education later in life because I was there, you
Mhm.
know. um
Yep, you were.
I was cognizant of your education.
Yeah.
um and so like,
Yeah.
but I also saw you got the degree, but then didn't fully
Mhm.
go into the thing that you thought. And so,
Mm.
like, that can be from externally a perceived failure. So,
Sure.
but like, how did you kind of
Yeah.
like take that journey of education into a
Yeah.
career that didn't line up the way that you thought it was going to? And like, how did
Yeah,
you
for
deal with
sure.
that perceived
Yeah.
failure?
It is a thing where time has revealed lots of bits of that whole thing to me as ultimately being the success. And but in the moment, yes, in the moment, I finished. I think I went to school, got a degree in recording engineering and entertainment business, and was dead set that I was going to go and get into the studio scene in Nashville, and got there and seemed like I was on the precipice of reaching that goal, and then I didn't. And man, it was hard. It was the failure that I didn't see coming because academically, to your point, academically, I was very successful, very, very successful, to
Annoyingly
the point
so.
where yeah, the only reason that you say it's annoyingly so is you just expected you thought we expected the same from you, and unfortunately for you, you succeeded in those things too academically and did really well. So you like to poke that at the bear a little bit, but you ended up doing all right. but yeah, so academically, I had done great. I had everybody kept telling me I was going to do these great things in the music world, and it didn't happen. And right or wrong, it doesn't matter. The failure to meet the goal that I had set for myself was a real thing. And the reality of not meeting that goal, now that I look at it, was that I set the expectation at a incomprehensibly high level. Man, you go to Nashville and every other person's a recording engineer wannabe. You go to Nashville and every other person is a singer-songwriter wannabe. And there's only so many jobs to go around in any of that, right? So you set yourself up not to succeed. And then, obviously there are people that do, but for me, it didn't happen. And that bothered me. And obviously you were around. So I had a wife and 3 kids at the time. And I made the decision that even though I was just bent over, crushed with not being able to do the thing, that I needed to do what was right for my family. So I got a real job. And that was the right thing. Even in our failure, sometimes it's the right thing, the thing that we do instead or whatever. And now you fast forward through a lot of years of trying to deal with that lingering, spiraling failure thing that we were talking about before. And I had opportunities to be more successful. But again, going back to the fear of success thing, I didn't do those things either. And now you fast forward to all my kids are grown adults doing things on their own, living their lives the way they want to, and making me a proud dad. But now I'm starting to do those things that I failed at before, but it wasn't from the failure wasn't for me to fail. It was for me to learn. And I spent the next 15 years learning. Mostly I learned that I wasn't cut out for that thing that I thought was a failure. I was cut out for something else, which is what I ended up doing. But the whole time that I was doing that thing, I was looking back at the thing that I failed at. So I wasn't embracing the success that I was having, which is crazy. Yep. And you were there, Jordan, it didn't always go well. I didn't always respond well in those moments, even though I was now looking back at it in a more successful place than I would have been if I had succeeded at the thing. Because really for me, for my personality, succeeding in the Nashville scene would have been a detriment to my family. I would never have been there. I was already never there, even with the things that I did after I didn't quite make it. Doing what I did though was working in a church, and so I could have my family near me when I needed, to work long hours and things like that. But again, even in the success, there are little failures, right? I didn't do the stuff with my kids that I probably should have done, and Jordan probably agree with that. I wasn't at everything, but I was at the big things. So we experience all these successes and all these failures and all the things, not just the creative things, but the life things as well. And then we sit back later and we look at it and we realize that the failures and the successes that we had, at this point, just were meant for something else in the future. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. But that was my thing. Yeah. Like this success that I had ended up academically led to what I perceived as a failure in the work thing that I wanted to do, in the field that I wanted to be in. But ultimately, it led to success later. Yeah. And that's okay. It doesn't. That's the thing, Jordan. It doesn't have to be right now, right?
It also doesn't have to be the way that you think it's supposed to be. Success isn't like failure in doing the thing that we thought that we were supposed to do, like, can be a success in a different, if you just shift the perspective, So like
Yes.
not doing
Hmm.
I've had people ask me, so when are you going to start working in your like degree field? You know, you have these degrees, when are you going to start
Hmm.
working in those fields? Just because my full-time job isn't a screenwriter,
Hmm.
isn't, a full-time author yet, could be. But like,
There you go.
just because it's not that now doesn't mean that I failed
Yeah.
my younger self who decided that these were going to be the degrees that I was going to pursue. And that's what,
Yeah.
I might have those degrees to never be a full-time screenwriter, never be a full-time author, never
Hmm.
make that my career path, just like you didn't make, you're not a full-time recording engineer, you know, just
Yeah.
because you have that degree doesn't mean that you're not using those skills that you had from that
Yeah.
education in different ways. And it doesn't mean that
Hmm.
just because I have 2 degrees doesn't mean that I'm overeducated and underutilizing that education. I might
Hmm.
have those degrees to help me understand not just like more about myself and my creative, like, what I like to do creatively, but maybe it's to
Hmm.
help educate other people on how to be,
Sure.
creative writers and learning
Yeah.
how to succeed and fail creatively and all of those things that I learned
Hmm.
through the process. The piece of paper means
Hmm.
nothing, but the process of
Yeah.
gaining that knowledge and those skills is where the
Sure.
success is found. So that
Yeah.
perceived failure of I'm not doing the things that I'm not working in my career field of like what my degree is in is not necessarily a failure, but a success in disguise, or a success that like presents itself in a way that we weren't anticipating. And so I think that like is a hard thing sometimes for creatives and for people that study things creatively, is like we spend all this money to
Hmm.
get all these like skills that, like you said, everybody that's in Nashville wants to be in the music business. Everybody that goes to
Hmm.
LA wants to be in the movie business. Like there's
Yeah.
so
That's right.
many people that want to do the creative thing because like we say on the channel all the time, everybody was created to create. And so we all have that
That's right.
creative nature that's just like bubbling inside of us and we want to do
Hmm.
the things. Some of us are afraid of the success of being able to do it and actually doing it, and then others are
That's right.
afraid of the failure of like, what if I'm not actually good enough? What if I don't get
Hmm.
to do the thing? But then there's the reality of there's so many people trying to do these creative things that
Hmm.
there might be some people that fall through the cracks of like they don't actually end up doing that thing in the overt way
Yeah.
that they thought that they would. They might not be
Sure.
the recording engineer in Nashville,
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean that the process that you took to get to where you are now is any less valuable
Yeah.
than it would be if you did hit that mark that you thought that you were
Yeah.
supposed to hit with the path that you took. And
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
where, again, we sit in that spiral of the failure. We think and
Hmm.
perceive things as failures, that are little successes, or is a
Hmm.
success if you shift, like I said, you shift that perspective. Um,
Yeah.
and so I don't know. That's just something that I've like learned along the way of getting that. When are you going to start doing the thing that you're meant to be
Mm.
doing? And I'm like, I'm doing it right now. I am in
Sure.
where I'm supposed to be. The season that I'm
That's
in,
right.
the space that I'm in creatively is where I'm supposed to be, even if
Hmm.
that space is not being creative in the ways that I want to be. Maybe this
Yeah.
is whatever season that I'm in. Like I might be in a season where I'm not writing at all. That doesn't mean that I'm
Hmm.
any less of a writer or creator because in this little season that is happening, I'm not writing,
Hmm.
but I might be studying people. I might be,
Sure.
watching films that I've never seen before and seeing how other people are
Hmm.
capturing the essence of what it is to be a human. The big questions of who are we and how do we fit together as a society or multiple
Hmm.
societies, and I might be gaining wisdom, insight, and creative like inspiration, but not outputting,
Hmm.
and so it's
Yeah.
like that. In that season though, you might see yourself like I've definitely seen myself as a failure. I'm not a writer. Can't say I'm a writer if I'm not
Hmm.
writing. But writers don't just write. Writers study people, they study the craft,
Sure.
they study a lot of different things of they have to be inspired of like the things externally in order to create from, we're
Mhm.
not God. We can't create from nothing. We have to have those external like inspirations in order to get to the point
That's right.
of creating. If I wish we
Mhm.
were like God in that sense of we could create from nothing, but there's also the
Mhm.
old saying of there's nothing new under the sun. And it's like, how do you take your creative voice and that special thing that you have and
Yeah,
make an old story something new? And so
for
but
sure.
that takes sometimes seasons of not doing the thing,
Yeah,
but that's a failure.
yeah,
It's not if you shift that perspective. So,
sure. Yeah, yeah. You said it. That, when it comes to writing specifically, so writers write, painters paint, um, mechanics fix. Whatever your
yeah.
thing is, doctors heal.
Mm,
If you- It is wrong thinking to think that if the doctor is not healing right in that moment, that makes him any less a
yeah.
doctor, or if that painter is not painting right at the moment, that he's not a painter. So your failure can't be associated with just not doing the
Mm,
thing in a specific moment. Now, if you don't do anything at all,
yeah.
to your point, research and that's part of a writer's thing. But if you're not doing anything, if you've just shut that thing down, then the question becomes: were you a writer?
Mm,
Like maybe you are a writer, or maybe you were a writer in the past,
yeah.
right? But the reality says that we kind of live in is that writers write, but not necessarily right now.
Mm, yeah.
And as a songwriter, it works the same for me. To your point, there are seasons where music comes, and I'm constantly writing music, but I'm not writing lyrics. And then there are seasons when I can write lyrics, and fortunately, I have song structures and things that I can kind of stitch those things together. And then there are seasons when they both happen at the same time, and that's the blessing, right? Because even for me, like if I'm not writing full songs, that the moment that if I write a song where everything's happening at the same time, the lyrics and the melody and the structure are all happening at the same time, that's to me a success. And then I consider all the other things failure. So if I write a really cool song musically, but it doesn't have lyrics, I'm like, well, that's not quite the same. But it is still a success. So I think in some regards, the way we perceive failure is not necessarily correct in how others may perceive failure or success,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that's as dangerous, like the expectation that our failure or our success is based on somebody else's criteria, as much as our failure or our success based on our own criteria. I think that both of those things are valid, yes, in and of themselves, but also very dangerous.
Yeah.
Like if we're always worried about what other people think, and that's the basis of whether something succeeds or fails in our in our minds, man, that's a struggle. And vice versa. If we only ever consider our success and failure criteria as the only criteria of success and failure, that's an issue. I heard one time, I don't know if this is true or not, but John Cougar Mellencamp, whoever, he wrote he wrote a bunch of songs in the 80s, smokes like 18 packs of cigarettes a day during that whole time. But he wrote a song called Jack and Diane. And as the story I heard, again, I don't know if this is right or wrong, is he didn't like the song, but his band made him record the song, cut the track in the studio, and it became his biggest hit. It's the song he's known for. So if that story is true, then his internal criteria of what made a good song or a bad song, success or failure, didn't match up with everybody else. Just as much as you could write the best story in the world, the best movie in the world, but if it doesn't meet the audience's expectations, it's a failure, right? So it's a both and scenario. And I go back to let's flip the script on this a little bit. Success and failure in regards to the creative things that we do is subjective, right? Because there is this different cultural aspects to artistic endeavors or creative endeavors, where you might not like a particular style of art or literature that I like, and so we automatically have these ideas that just because I don't like it makes it bad, right? And that's not true. I don't particularly care for certain kinds of music, but I can understand that it's good comparatively speaking to other things in the same genre, right? But with that doesn't matter really when it comes to creativity. It's kind of this kind of opposite thing, right? But it is a matter of does it meet your criteria? So I just said that we got these competing criteria. Ultimately, when it comes to being creative, does it fulfill you at some level? That is success.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And there's also the side of things where we are our own worst critic. So our failures might not be actual failures, but because we are our own worst critic and our harshest critic, we perceive them as failures, but in fact, they might be success from an external, like you're talking with John Mellencamp, and it's like that song is highly successful. And if he didn't actually like it, he's his own worst critic in that sense. But like the rest of the world is saying, hey, your internal critic is wrong because this is good. We like what you did here, and we appreciate the art that you put out into the world. And so there's that side of it.
And potentially that thing that he thought was a failure that ended up being a success may have been the thing that propelled him into writing the other great songs that he wrote. Whereas if he had not listened to his bandmates, again, I don't know if this is true, but if let's say in this fictitious world where this actually happened, if it's not the case, let's say he doesn't listen to his bandmates, they don't cut the track, and really Jack and Diane is the thing that put him on the map. So maybe he's a one-hit, maybe not even a one-hit wonder. Maybe he's a one-album guy that only sells 150,000 copies of his first album, and you never hear about him again. Sometimes our perceptions about a thing are wrong for the masses, but again, I don't know that matters as much in the long run when it comes to creative things. Whether all types of creativity, but specifically in our conversation here, the artistically creative endeavors that we do. Man, I do think that there is a matter of as long as it satisfies your creative expectations, then it is a success. Now, once you get it outside of that, you got these layers of judgment on your creative works that becomes external success and failure. And yes, we need to have those if we're going to expect to do good things creatively that are going to touch more than just our inner circle of people or us only as individuals. There are songs that I've written that with the exception of you guys, my kids and wife, nobody else has heard. And really, when it comes to that, right now internally, it doesn't matter as long as I consider it a good song. It's a good song. But as soon as I release it, now there's this expectation that there's an external judgment of whether that thing is good or not. So, it's a both and. We succeed and we fail. And we use those things and we build on them, the lessons that we learn from both, right?
Okay, so it's my turn to ask you a question. And I think, just in this vein of what we've been we're just talking about is what is a lesson or lessons, some of the biggest lessons that you have learned from failure that have then ended up allowing you to be more prepared for success in the future.
Okay. You know, as I look back, and it seems to me that for the entirety of my life, I have thought of all the things that I did as like they didn't matter. It wasn't important, and you know, it was, you know, had this job and I learned this thing, and I consider all those things failures, like, because it wasn't the thing that I wanted to do. It never was the thing I wanted to do. But what I realized later in life, and then subsequently forgot, and then had to remember again, because we're all stupid that way. Or I don't want to speak for everybody. I'm like that. But I learned all these things because I had done this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing, and none of them made any sense. I was okay at them. I was, average at best at a lot of these things. And then I come to find down the line that I have this next thing, job or whatever, and I realized that I'm using all these things that I considered failures at the time. I'm using the skills that I learned, when I was, in I don't know, my first job working in a cabinet shop. I'm using those skills. Jobs that I had doing architectural design, I'm using those skills. The education that I got, getting my college education, I'm using the skills and the knowledge that I had in that. And at the time, I didn't realize, like, I'm looking at the things that I'm doing, and I'm like, it's just strange that I know how to do all of these things. Well, it's not strange. It's not strange at all.
It's a little strange.
No, but really, it's not strange at all, because God knew that He was going to need me to do a thing in the future, and He got me there. So what I perceived as failures are God's success in my life. His success is always the best success, because He puts you where He needs you to do the things He needs you to do for the purpose that He has for you and for others. And so failure, even in the middle of hard times in your life, failure can sometimes really be success, that you're not experiencing the success now, but you're going to experience the success in that later. Like potentially that cabinet shop that I worked in when I was 19, 20 years old, I learned how to do a lot of things. It really wasn't the thing. It was paying the bills, and I appreciated it. But from that perspective of just paying the bills, but it didn't fulfill me. There wasn't a sense of fulfillment in it. And so I perceived that as a failure. But no, it's not a failure, because I learned skills that I used later. And so it goes back to the whole concept of what the world meant for evil, God meant for good in my life. And so the world was telling me that you should do something different. You should do something more. You should do something that pays better. And yes, to all of that. Yes, I would prefer to do something different, prefer to do something more, prefer to do something that pays better. But that wasn't the end result that God meant here. It was the temporary thing. Like, it did pay the bills. It did get me knowledge that I didn't have otherwise. So in the long run, the failures that we have in life can be used by God in the future to do great things. And I've done some really crazy, cool things. And then I forgot that I got to do those cool things, those crazy things, with all these things that I thought were failures that ended up being successes. And then I stop and I look back at them at a moment where maybe I'm a little depressed, that things aren't going exactly the way I think they should be. And then I still see it as a failure, instead of realizing the thing that I thought 2 minutes ago, that it was a success because I learned all these things. Right? It's the fickle mind that we all have. It's that stubborn spirit within us that doesn't see that even in the midst of our failures, we can learn things that help us to succeed in our future. And that's important. It's important to not just forget everything about a failure. You got to remember the things. Remember the things to inspire you to succeed. because that's important, right? It's important to take those failures and use them as stepping stones to succeed. But it's also to pull the things out of those things that we consider in our minds, like we were talking about just a minute ago, in our minds as failures that maybe other people saw as something different. But we take those things that we've learned and we carry them with us so that we can use them in something that is successful in the future. And that goes for everything, Jordan. That goes for the creative things across the board. And like I've talked about many times, you've heard this and read this, and script editor having to read the same thing over and over again. Say, yeah, Dad, you got that. I get it. Tell people again. But it's a real thing. We take the things that we learn, we process through them. We have skills, talents, and abilities that God has given us, and we develop those in sometimes really strange and weird ways. We have seasons where we don't do the thing. We talked about that. You don't necessarily always write. I play drums. I haven't played drums in decades almost. And then I get a chance to play drums again, and I'm realizing like, hey, I have this skill set and it's coming back to me. And it just little things like that. So, but we pull those things, and we could see those things as complete failures and not want to remember anything about them. But we pull what God has shown us in the midst of those things, and we use them again later. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It is an interesting thing about all things creative, right? And I talk about that a lot. We have artistically creative things, but then there's everything else that is also creative, you know? And so it is about taking those things, whether they're artistically creative or the everything else that's creative, you know, bookkeeping, running, being a doctor, lawyer, whatever, mechanic, mother, father. You learn skill sets in doing all these things. And you take what you learn from that and you apply it to something else down the road. And that process is creative. That's ingenuity. That's inspirational. All the things that we talk about on this channel, success or failure, you can still have those. You can have those successes and failures and still apply all of those things in a creative way, inspired by God to do great things in this moment. So that's what I got on that one.
Very nice.
But it is a cool and interesting thing when we look at our lives and we realize that things that we saw as bad or things we saw as good, you know, down the line, we realize that it was the other way. Things that we perceived as good were bad, and things that we perceived as bad were good.
Yeah,
well,
I think that ties in for me. If I was to have one of the bigger lessons for me, and like I've been talking about it, you know, the whole video is that reframing of my understanding of what failure is. And you can't have that mental shift of seeing failure as not necessarily failure, but like you're saying, like a future success or success if looked at differently. But you can't have that reframing that of that mindset without failure happening, you know. And so it takes perceived failure or actual failure, you know, over and over again for you to take and make that, you know, create that neural pathway in your brain of maybe this isn't a failure. You know, you don't do that instant spiral. You take it and you sit with it and you're like, okay, hey, maybe this is a future success. Maybe this is success in a different light. Maybe, you know, X, Y, and Z. But like I said, it takes failing or perceiving yourself as failing in order to have that shift in your brain. And that's what helps to set you up for success. Or at least for me, that's what has shifted. Because it used to be if I failed, it crushed me. I crumbled into nothingness and I sat in despair and wallowed there. Nothing could pull me out until I was done with my little pity party. About the smallest thing. It was I didn't get an A, I got a B plus. And it was, you know, different things like that.
That never happened,
You
Jordan.
know?
Never happened.
But it's different things like that. And like, I would literally not be able to function if I thought that I failed, because I had these personal expectations that have always been astronomically high. I had these perceived expectations, not actual, but perceived external expectations from parents, um, you know, bosses and employers, from colleagues, from other students that like I worked with on projects and stuff in school, or, you know, employees under me at like certain jobs where I was over like an X amount of people, like all these perceived expectations. And so there's a lot of pressure that comes from that,
Sure.
and both the internal and the external. And then not to say that there aren't just actual expectations externally as well and internal that are like valid and, you know, but all of these like seemingly like impossible expectations is more is what I'm talking about, of like that crippling, just if you mess up, if you step out of like the line of what is supposed to be, if you step off the yellow brick road, you don't get to the Emerald City, you know, like it's this whole, you know, idea of you have to follow this path, you have to do things a certain way, you have to succeed a certain way, but it's in that kind of like brokenness that we find ourselves in when we fail, that we then can learn how to succeed. I think for me, the image of I believe it's ancient Japanese or Chinese process of if a vase would break, they didn't throw it away as, oh well, it's broken, gotta throw it away. They would fill it with, it would be filled with gold to add to the value of it. It was no longer broken. It was put back together. It was whole, but you could see all of the fractures that happened, but they weren't exemplified to make them ugly and like, you know, unattractive. It actually, those flaws makes the vase even more beautiful, because now you see all of the like ways that it broke and the different like pieces that came from it and how it was put back together, and the whole process of putting it back together in itself is a creative process, is a, you know, picking up those pieces, and it's hard work to put something back together in the same shape that it was before it broke completely, you know. And so for me, I take that visual and I apply it to like my creative of like, if something falls apart, put it back together and fill it with that gold, so that way it has the whole history of where it like crumbled, and I picked up all those pieces and I put it back together, because that shows the story, that shows the journey of how you got there, even if it's just for yourself and you're the only one that sees that.
Sure.
But I want a pretty vase on my shelf inside my brain, you know, like I want that pretty and artistically expressive form of like showing how I failed and how then I picked those pieces up to make this new thing, you know. And good. I think that's like how you're talking about of like future success, because if something crumbles and breaks and you fail, you can't just pick it all back up and it's instantly better. It's not, you know,
you got to work at
a video game where you hit to reload from last save point. Like that's not how this works. You have to actually do the work.
That's right.
To pick yourself back up. And so I think the whole process of, like you were saying, like we have this warped kind of like perception of failure and success, of like that whole dichotomy. And I'm not like, I don't want to say that failure is not real, because it is. Yeah. But I think the pressure and the definition that we've put onto what failure isn't true. It's not accurate. Because if it was, then I'm a failure. And I'm not a failure. I'm more than what I haven't done or what I've done wrong or done the way that I didn't think was supposed to be done. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that I am that failure. Sure. I'm not the sum of all the failures that have ever happened to me. I am the sum of the failures and successes. That's what makes me who I am. That is the essence of Jordan, you know. And I think that it's all about like the reframing of your mind
Sure.
of what is failure, what is success, what is creativity, what is my process,
Hmm.
because we can get so caught up if I don't do the thing creatively that I am supposed to be doing in the process that I've made,
Hmm.
then if I don't follow that process, then I'm failing myself in
Sure.
the sense of
Yeah.
I'm not doing things the way that I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
How you were saying of like sometimes you have where you write the
Hmm.
music of a song, but you don't have the lyrics, and
That's right.
sometimes you have the lyrics. But if you said, I always have to write the music and then the lyrics, and then I have to, touch
Hmm.
everything up, and then the song is done. If you had to do it that way every time, you wouldn't have any music,
That's right.
you know? So like it's that whole like you're not a failure because you don't do step A, step B, step C, like it's
Hmm.
not you're not a failure because you don't follow that set rigid
Yeah.
path for what your creative process is. And
Sure.
we've talked about creative process and all that in
Hmm.
like videos before. But yeah, it's all about like that reframing of what is failure, what is success, and
Yeah.
how does that apply to me, and how do I take that to then be successful in spite of failure,
Yeah.
you know? Um,
And
so
I think I think it's you said something that sparks something in my brain just now. Doesn't happen often. Um, uh, you said something about I'm a failure, like
mhm,
or or I'm successful. I think it is a dangerous thing, and it's something that we have done as a society. It's a cultural thing that we actually define ourselves as a
mhm,
success or a failure. Like
yeah,
it's a characteristic of who we are, instead of a thing that is an effect of a thing we have, or the effect of something that we have done,
yeah,
which is different. Because if we continually say I am a failure, and again we're talking about creativity here primarily, but even in life, but if we let's just look at it from a creative standpoint. If I say
mhm,
I'm a failure at doing whatever the creative thing is I'm doing, then that becomes the definition of who I am, even
yeah,
internally to me. And that's a dangerous place to be, because
mhm,
the way we perceive ourselves sometimes isn't healthy. We perceive ourselves as more than we are or less than we are, right? So,
yeah,
but if we hang on to the failure, then that doesn't give us opportunity to have success.
mm,
Just like if we hold on, if we're defined by we are successful, like that is who we are, we're successful, then the first time we fail, we fall apart.
yep,
So that's what this whole video really in the end is about, right? It's about success and failure, and the fact that we have to have both, and we can't be
yeah,
defined by either. Because
yeah,
if we're defined by either, then the other is impossible to have. If we're defined by failure, success is never going to happen. If we're defined by
mm,
success, when failure happens, everything falls apart. So neither identification is healthy. If
mm,
we're defined by I'm Rob, I'm created by God, you're Jordan, you're created by God, and that's the definition of who we are, then the things that happen because as an effect of things that we have caused, it's a cause and effect relationship, and failure and success are options for both. Just as
yeah,
something neutral, sometimes we have that middle ground that neither successful or necessarily a failure. So I think that's the most important thing for us to really understand about success and failure, is that neither of those things is a defining aspect of who we are as a person. Because if it is, it's going to be a painful experience for you
yep,
at some point. Either way.
yep,
So,
exactly.
well, I want to kind of wrap this thing up a little bit, but as you know, Jordan, inspiring the creative nature within all of us is the goal of what we're trying to do here. So as we do wrap up, tell all of us what is it that inspires you?
I honestly, it's just literally being alive. If like to put a broad stamp on it, but
Okay.
it's people and the ways that we interact with each other. Is so crazy that there's so many different people and we're all uniquely ourselves, and the way that we can interact with one another and again uniquely individualistic like relationships with like I have a different relationship with you than like my sister has with you or my brother has with you.
That's
you
right.
know, like the fact that like we're all different people but we can interact with one another in unique ways like is so inspiring to see how different brains work and different emotions and things like that.
And that
And so people
and that inspires
yeah.
your creative things,
Oh
right?
yeah. Like cuz at the heart of it of the storytelling is people. That is
Yeah.
the whole point of telling a story is to tell something about being human and being alive. That is the whole goal for me at least. That is the whole purpose of what it is to be a writer is to tell stories about humans to humans so that they understand different humans than themselves. You know, that is the whole like process of why I tell stories. And so understanding people and seeing them in different, you know, settings of like um, I worked in coffee shops for 15 plus years, and the amount of people that I've seen in those coffee shops and the stories that I could tell you are crazy. You know, I work at a hotel front desk now. The amount of people that come through hotels with different stories to tell is insane, you know, but like it's so fun. Like, yes, I might not be working in that career field of like what my degree's in right now, but I'm gathering intel on what it is to be human from outside of what it is to be Jordan. You
Oh,
know, like I already know what it is to be Jordan, and like that is part of telling my story.
sure.
But like, what is it to be Rob? What is it to be, you know, the random person that I just checked in on Tuesday to the hotel, you know, that's from the other side of the world? What is it like to be you? And how is like your unique experience different from mine? And like that is the that's what really like gets me creatively like inspired.
Okay.
People, but nature, like I can see a bright blue sky and I'm like, wow, I want to write about a bright blue sky right now. You know, like it's the little things and like just noticing life outside of my bubble of who I am,
Sure.
you know, is something. So, you know, I know we were talking earlier and like before we started recording, I was like, I'm not one of those writers that's super inspired by other books or not even like necessarily other movies because I'm like, that's cool. It's I love reading and I love watching movies and TV shows and seeing how other people do things. But like for me, that's their voice. That's their understanding of humans and nature and everything like that. And they're like but it falls back into I'm not as much inspired by what I see or on the page or on the screen, but it's like more inspired by the people that are acting and the director and writers who created the things and how they see the world. That's the thing that inspires me rather than the actual like art and like the written or like visual, you know, story that I'm reading. It's more so the people behind it, the real people that like created the thing and how they see the world. And I think that's the thing that inspires me when it comes to like consuming other creative materials. So yeah, there's a lot of different things, but it all comes down to being human and seeing how we interact with the rest of humanity.
Wow, that's cool. Well, thank you, Jordan. I really, really appreciate your time today and your help with that you've given me over the years through all my creative endeavors. And, you know, I love you. You're my girl, and you are truly a blessing to me. See, in everything in life that we put effort into, there's a chance to fail and a chance to succeed. If we never try, we never have the opportunity to receive the blessing that comes from success and failure. Hopefully, in both success and failure, we grow in our lives and in our creative endeavors. We can take the outcomes of our attempts to do creative things in life and use them to build us up. And that gives us the capacity and the desire to go, create, and be a blessing. It's my girl. Have a good one, guys. You can support our channel by subscribing, hitting that bell icon to get notified when new content comes out, and liking our videos. If you'd like to consider supporting our team financially, there's a link in the video description with more details. Those things will help our channel for sure, but if you do nothing else, please spend some time in the comments of our videos encouraging one another to create, to help others create, and to help grow that creative nature within us all. Oh, and you can check out these videos too. Thanks. We'll see you again soon.